And in the latest edition of the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, co-host Kenny Roda and I talk about the Cleveland Browns, the end of their season, the NFL playoffs, the Super Bowl, of course, Tampa Bay over the Kansas City Chiefs. And Kenny and I also talk about the Cleveland Indians having traded Frankie Lindor and the rebuilding Cleveland Cavaliers. Welcome to the latest edition of the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm Dennis Manoloff with co-host Kenny the Roadman Roda. It's a nostalgic show for the two of us because it'll be our final Next Man Up podcast where Roadman and I are concerned. So we got the Kleenex out and we're ready to cry our way through it. But it's been a while since we've hooked up. Mid-December. We've been very busy, and thankfully for that. So we got a lot of ground to cover from the last time we spoke. Roadman, best way to open up, before we get into the big three, the Browns, Indians, Cavs, we do need to talk about some of the luminaries who have passed away since we previously spoke, and that list includes Les Levine, a guy that you and I both know as a legend in Cleveland media and someone who been a father figure to me. And then of course today, I mean, there are plenty of others, but of course today it's fresh. Marty Schottenheimer having passed away, but any others that you think of as we speak. But I did want to get your thoughts on the life and legacy of Les Levine.
Well, D-Man, 50 years in the business, and every avenue you could possibly go down in the media business, he drove down it with the windows open, the top down, and the horn blaring, right? I mean, radio talk show host, TV talk show host, play-by-play guy. And was there anybody better as a on-air guy as well as a salesman, combining the two? More sports and less Levine on TV was his baby, and he sold it and was in complete control of that. Les and I were adversaries back in the day when I was at KNR and he was at WHK. But obviously in this business, you cross paths so many times and you become friends over the years. And in this business, as you know, as I know, you don't always stay with the same place. They decide to go in a different direction, and you end up working together with some people that you worked against, if you will, for a while. But there was enough going on in Cleveland sports for all of us to be able to talk about it. And Les did it as well as anybody, like I said, on TV and on radio. And on top of all that was a great guy. So he is going to be sorely missed, but he will not be forgotten. That's for sure. He's left a lasting legacy.
Yeah, and it can be forgotten, but it shouldn't, that Les Levine was a heck of a play-by-play voice, and he was the man calling the Cleveland State games during their miracle season in '86, and it was fun, to listen to that again as the tributes poured in after Les passed last Wednesday night. So we think about him, and of course we think about Marty Schottenheimer and his legacy with the Browns, and what a great coach he was, and all of Browns Nation is definitely mourning his passing. Speaking of the Browns.
Hey, real quick, D-Man, I want to just tell a quick story about Marty, because we had Ray Ellis on the Kenny and JT show on WHBC today, and we're taping this on, what is this, a Tuesday? So earlier, Tuesday on the show. And Ray Ellis went to McKinley High School. He went to Ohio State, played for Woody, was drafted by the Eagles and Dick Vermeil, and then played with the Browns for 2 seasons, 86, 87, was part of the Drive. And so we had him on to tell stories about Marty and what Marty meant to him and what Marty was like, as a head coach. And the one thing that he pointed out that he loved about Marty was the fact that Marty was a former NFL player. So as a head coach, he understood what guys were going through on the field, in a game, in practice, off the field, and treated them as such, and kind of understood, the life of an NFL football player. And Ray Ellis said that that was definitely something that he remembers about Marty and respected about Marty. And he also wanted to, make sure that everybody knew that that 98-yard drive was not Marty's fault, and it was not a prevent defense. It was the players' faults, I should say, for not making plays. He said, look, well, we just didn't make the plays. I didn't make the play. I didn't come up with an interception. I didn't come up with a knockdown for my safety position. We didn't make the play. And he felt that Marty got an unfair, it was an unfair knock against Marty, that all these years, all you hear about, they went to the prevent defense and it was Marty's fault that they lost that game to Denver in the drive. And Ray Ellis wanted to make sure that, no, that wasn't the case. That's on us, the players, and not Marty Schottenheimer. So some very interesting things from Ray about Marty. And I read so many other great things about Marty as well. 7th all-time, D-man, 200 career wins in the regular season. That still stands as 7th all-time. Only 7 coaches in NFL history have ever won 200 or more games in the regular season. And Marty was one of them. Unfortunately, he never won the big one. Got to 3 AFC championship games, 2 with the Browns, 1 with the Chiefs? Yeah.
Chiefs, yeah, against the Bills.
Had that 14-2 season with the San Diego Chargers, but like many teams and many coaches, he lost to Tom Brady and the Patriots that year. So he shouldn't really, be knocked for that as well. But a good guy to cover and one of the best Browns coaches of all time, considering that he and Bud Carson are the only 2 coaches to lead the Browns to an AFC championship game.
Yeah, universally respected. And as you said, he would take the blame for his players willingly. He would never, that I remember, throw his players under the bus, as it were.
Right.
And it remains to be seen what happens with the current Browns, under Stefanski and Barry and DePodesta. But as of now, the last time the Browns had sustained success, multi-year success, was under Marty Schottenheimer in the mid to late 80s. So he is he's an awesome guy, amazing legacy, and he will be sorely missed. We think about the Browns, though. The previous time we spoke was toward the end of the season, and the Browns finished up 11-5. They needed to beat the watered-down Steelers in week 17 in Cleveland. They did so to get into the playoffs. First time in the playoffs since 02. And then go to Pittsburgh, wild card round, beat the Steelers in that wild one with all the, the turnovers for Ben and the fumble on the first play, the bad snap turned into a touchdown for the Browns. So the Browns win their wild card game, which was the first playoff victory since '94 in the franchise's annals, and the first road playoff victory since '69. Then they go to Kansas City for the divisional round and think they're going to face Patrick Mahomes for 4 quarters, but they only face him for 2.5 because he is concussed on a tackle and is out for the remainder of the game, replaced by Chad Henne. And the Browns wind up losing regardless, 22-17. So, Roadman, first, give me your overarching thoughts about the Cleveland Browns 2020 season, and, of course, into 2021 with the postseason. But their 2020 season, just sum that up for me.
Moving in the right direction, extremely successful year. The future is very bright for Kevin Stefanski, the NFL Coach of the Year, and the Cleveland Browns. That's what I take away from this season, D-Man. They went out and they beat the Steelers in the regular season finale, and then, as you said, knocked them off in the playoffs for the first time ever. You look at what is in place offensively. This is a team that is able, when healthy, to score with anybody in the National Football League. Baker Mayfield has a plethora of weapons at his disposal. When OBJ, if indeed he does come back, if not, they trade for another speedy wide receiver, whoever that would be. You have him. You have Juice Landry. I like Hollywood Higgins as the third receiver. The tight ends, you'll have 2 of the 3 back for sure. With Hooper. and Harrison Bryant. Don't know what's up with David Njoku, and the running backs are the best tandem in the league. So the weapons are there. Baker made great strides, and it's one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League. So I love the direction the offense is going under head coach and offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski. I want to give Alex Van Pelt some credit for helping Baker Mayfield bounce back from a very poor second season. I thought Alex Van Pelt did a nice job filling in, calling plays for when Kevin Stefanski was out with COVID. And we haven't even talked about that this was a COVID pandemic season in year number 1 for Kevin Stefanski. And that's one of the reasons why I think he won Coach of the Year. So offensively, love what this team did this year and the direction they're headed. Defensively is where the work needs to be done, D-Man. And I know Andrew Berry realizes that. Pauly Analytics realizes that. So they've got to address it via free agency, via trade, and in the draft. They need an edge rusher because they're not going to be bringing Olivier Vernon back coming off the Achilles injury. He's a free agent, and he was playing well when he got hurt. So they need some help on the opposite side for Myles Garrett. The linebackers are a huge question mark. Phillips and Wilson, to me, I didn't see anything great out of either one of those guys or any, glimmers that make me go, wow, I'm looking forward to seeing those guys as starters. Taki did a couple of things of the three. He stood out the most to me of the linebackers, but still not anybody that I see as a Pro Bowl caliber guy or an all-pro caliber guy. Denzel Ward needs to stay healthy if he can. He's one of the best cover corners in the league. Greedy Williams, can he even get on the football field? He's a very good cover guy when he plays, but he can't stay healthy. So they need cornerback help, safety help, and linebacker help. And if they can address 2 out of the 3 next season, for next season with that offense, I think they'll be in the division hunt. Definitely a playoff caliber team. And I saw where they had the 8th best odds to win Super Bowl 56 at 20-1, D-Man. So I'm not the only one thinking that the Browns are headed in the right direction. The guys in the desert do as well.
Well, Roadman, I'm with you on a lot of what you said regarding the regular season and the accomplishments of this particular team within the context of this franchise's struggles since 1999. So you give a tremendous tip of the hat, tip of the cap, tip of the helmet to everybody in that organization for what they were able to accomplish. 11-5, a playoff berth, a playoff victory. So that is all thrilling to me, but I got to say, I remain bitter about how the season ended. And I have not been able to wrap myself in, everything's fine. These guys are on a great trajectory. Don't worry about what happened in Kansas City. It's just a blip on the growth chart, and these guys are ready to soar. No. I've been around long enough on this planet and an NFL fan for decades to know that NFL clearly stands for not for long. And that pertains to players and it pertains to teams. And when you get an opportunity in the NFL, you better take advantage of it because you can't guarantee that you're going to be back there the very next year. And that's why this particular season with this particular divisional round loss stings so much to me. If Patrick Mahomes had played the entire game, I'm virtually certain the Chiefs would have won going away because the Browns simply did not have the horses to run with that Chiefs offense. And by the way, the Chiefs defense wasn't bad either. If Mahomes had played the entire game, they probably would have won by double digits, at least the Chiefs. But the fact is he didn't. Okay. The Cleveland Browns got a gift from the gods when Mahomes was tackled hard but clean by Mack Wilson and was concussed and was ruled out for the remainder of the game. At that point, I believe the score was 19-10, and the Chiefs were on the move, and they ended up finishing that possession with a field goal to go up 22-10. So it wasn't like Mahomes was knocked out when the Chiefs were up 35-3. He was knocked out when it was very much a game. At that point, the Cleveland Browns have got to win that game. They have to. I don't care what stage of development they're in. I don't care what the future looks like. You have to win that game. Now, if they had, would they guarantee to beating the Bills in Orchard Park to go to the Super Bowl? I'm not saying that. I'm saying you had a chance to knock out the defending Super Bowl champs because the best quarterback on the planet was out and you didn't do it. And the way the game ended really got me thinking, because with 8 minutes to go, the Browns have the ball down 5 at their 20. Let's go. All right, you got the number 1 overall pick in 2018. You got plenty of offensive weapons. You got a line that's relatively healthy. Let's go right down the field and score the touchdown. Instead, 7 plays, 12 yards and punt. And you could debate whether they should have punted, but you know what? Even after the punt, you got Chad Henne on the field, and you couldn't get him off the field. 3rd and 14, he scrambles for 13 and a half. Then on 4th down, Andy Reid does you a favor, and he doesn't put Henne under center. He puts him in shotgun, so he takes away the sneak. And you're thinking, oh, he's definitely going to run out the clock and punt the ball. No, he snaps it and throws it out to Tyreek Hill, and that's your ball game. That's an inexcusable way for the season to end. And that's why I remain bitter, even as I look to the future and feel good about the Browns' prospects. I just can't believe that they lost essentially to Chad Henne, and they lost in a Arrowhead Stadium that was sparsely populated, so they had that advantage. They didn't have to deal with a full house at Arrowhead. So I was scratching my head about some of the play calls for Kevin Stefanski in that game. I didn't think he had one of his better games as a play caller. And here's
I chalk that up to inexperience, D-man, and you have to go through those bumps and bruises. You don't just ascend, to the championship unless you have Tom Brady as your quarterback in one season. So that's a head coach who'd never been in that position before. Let's not forget Jedrick Wills. Did he not leave that game, the starting left tackle for Wills the Browns?
Out, yes.
With an injury early in that game. They still had their playmakers, even though Mahomes was out. You just need to get the ball in the hands of those playmakers. And you had a veteran coach knowing what worked for him earlier, ran the same exact play to put the nail in the coffin to beat Miami earlier that year with that Tyreek Hill play, and they went back to it, and it's something they had practiced earlier in the week for that specific situation. So to me, it was about experience, and you were dealing with the defending Super Bowl champs, even though Patty Mahomes, I agree, it was a great opportunity, but it showed that the Browns, while they made great strides, and I think they're headed in the right direction, you weren't ready just yet to unseat the defending Super Bowl champs who got back to another Super Bowl and came up short.
Okay, but let me just throw this out, and this is not, talk show host or podcast host trying to be hot take guy. That's not who I am. That's not how I roll. But I'm beginning to wonder a little bit about Kevin Stefanski's play calling in big games. I take you back to 2 seasons ago when he was the interim OC of the Vikings, final week of the season. I believe the Vikings were at home playing the Bears, and they were an unmitigated disaster offensively, and they lost the game. And if they would have won the game, they would have made the playoffs. And instead, the Philadelphia Eagles got in. Then last year, Stefanski's the OC, and the offense does a nice job in the first game. I can't remember who they beat, maybe the Packers. But then the second game, they go to San Francisco, and it was just as ugly as you can possibly imagine. I mean, they were awful offensively. Now, granted, San Fran, really good team at that point.
I was going to say, they got to the Super Bowl that year, didn't they?
That's true. I mean, that's very true, but still a terrible offensive game for the Vikings. And then this year, Week 17, when the season's on the line, the playoffs are on the line, I don't think Kevin Stefanski called one of his better games when against the watered-down Steelers. The Browns were able to escape primarily because of the Steelers' absences. And by the way, Mason Rudolph played well in that game, so I'm not automatically saying if Ben had been in there, it was guaranteed that he was going to light it up and the Steelers were going to win. But The point is, it was a very unsteady, uneven kind of a play calling game for Stefanski, but they were able to get through it. Then the following week, Stefanski's out because of COVID, and Alex Van Pelt takes his place. Now, did Van Pelt benefit from Steelers turnovers? You better believe he did. Did he benefit from the first snap by Pouncey going over Ben's head and into the end zone for a touchdown by the Browns? Yes, he did. He played with the lead, and he was able to. But I tell you what, I liked what I saw from the Browns that day, and Alex Van Pelt was calling the plays. Then the following week in Kansas City, Stefanski's back, and another one of those uneven, choppy games when everything was on the line. Now, am I saying that Kevin Stefanski is not a genius? No, of course he is. We know he's a genius, and I'm being serious. He's a brilliant man.
You know he won the Coach of the Year, right? I'm just making sure you understand that.
100%. Okay. I truly do understand how great Kevin Stefanski was this year, and how smart he is, and everything else. And he called some good games this year. Don't get me wrong. But I'm wondering, does he think a little bit, perhaps, now that he's got 1 year under his belt and he knows how talented Alex Van Pelt is, does he think about offloading the play calling to Alex Van Pelt? And not as some indictment of him, but of Stefanski, but as a way of saying, you know what, I can best utilize Alex Van Pelt's brain, and I can concentrate on being more of a CEO of this team. I don't know. I doubt he's going to do it. I'm pretty sure he's going to say, hey, I'm good with this. And there were extraneous factors the last couple of years. These games that, you're talking about, they weren't my fault for X, Y, and Z reasons.
You mean like they couldn't practice for like 3 straight weeks? Yeah, that might have had something to do with it too.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I'm just throwing it out there that I think Alex Van Pelt is a very capable play caller, and I wouldn't be adverse to that responsibility being offloaded from Stefanski to Van Pelt, especially when I realize that Stefanski, as the reigning Coach of the Year, I want him more involved on the defensive side. Now, he would, of course, say that he is, but I would like him to be freer, especially during games, to observe what's happening with the defense and weigh in what's happening with the defense. So anyway, clearly you don't agree with me, but that's
no,
fine.
we're on opposite.
It's not a popular take.
We're on opposite sides on that one. I thought he did for what the position he was put in his first year. I thought he was outstanding. Did he have questionable calls? Absolutely. I agree with you about that first Steelers game. I was wondering why the hell he wasn't running Nick Chubb, religiously in that first Steelers game to get in the playoffs. But he came out and said, hey, I was trying to keep him fresh for the next week because I knew we'd need him the next week against the Steelers. So I'd say, wow, guy has king-size cojones if he figured they were going to win that game and he could save Nick Chubb for the following week. So he learned. Was he perfect? No, but for a first-year coach to win 12 games in their first ever playoff win over the Steelers and their first road playoff win since '69, I understand that there are going to be ups and downs, and there were more ups than downs for Stefanski, and I think they're in good hands.
Yeah, I don't doubt that Stefanski deserved Coach of the Year. I was pounding the table for Stefanski all year as a tremendous head coach. That was the one critique though I had. Chase wants to jump in.
Yeah, if I can jump in, because we've talked about, at least I have, Coach Stefanski's play calling on the Orange is Oranger. He's had a lot of questionable play calls throughout the season. We think back to week 1, that fake punt against the Ravens, which led to the disastrous first quarter. And if that end around to OBJ didn't work against Dallas, who knows how that game turns out? I just think he benefited a lot from these risky plays working out, whereas I'm not so sure. And I know Kenny's
worked,
well,
right?
That's why they work.
That's why they used them. They worked. They caught the defense by surprise. OBJ took it to the house, the one you're referencing there. So I mean, I liked his aggressiveness with the exception of the last time they had the ball against Kansas City. Okay. I would have went for it there. That's the one. If I have one big knock, one questionable thing about what Stefanski did, not going for it there would have been it.
I agree. I just wanted to say that's something that I've been monitoring all season, and they've worked, which is great, but gosh, how more are they going to keep working? I don't know. That's
we'll find out.
On balance, I trust Stefanski will make the right call. And honestly, if he says, you know what, I learned from my mistakes this year. They hired me because I'm an offensive mind. I'm taking the play calling and I'm running with it. I'm fine with that. I guess I wouldn't panic at all if he decided to continue to call the plays. I just wonder, with a talent like Van Pelt at his disposal, will he even think about it? And let me say this too about the defense. Okay. The much maligned Cleveland Browns defense. And I was hearing this a lot in the immediate aftermath of Browns Chiefs. And then even today, or yesterday, I was hearing it about, the Browns defense. The defense cost them. And yes, I pointed out they couldn't get Chad Henne off the field in the end, and that cost them dearly. But here's the bottom line with the defense as pertains to the AFC divisional round game. All the Cleveland Browns needed to score in that game to win was 23 points. Not 33, not 30, not 27, 23. So for all of the talk about how the defense did this wrong and the defense did that wrong, and oh my gosh, horrible, horrible, horrible defense. Defense can't get off the field. Oh, really? Well, take a look at the time of possession in that game. It was almost even. I think the Chiefs had the ball for 30 seconds more, the equivalent of 1 minute more than the Browns, because the Browns had 30 seconds less and the Chiefs had 30 seconds more. So don't tell me that the Chiefs dominated the time of possession, because they didn't. And the fact of the bottom line in that whole thing is the score. And for as bad as the Browns defense has been in certain situations, and as much of an upgrade as the Browns defense needs, in that particular game, that defense was only responsible for 22 points allowed, and you got to win that game with 23. You have to score 23 against the Chiefs in that situation. So, it's not like I have to stick up for the Browns defensive players, but I think it's too easy to just chalk that loss up to a bad defense, because if you do that, you're not really looking at the facts. You're not really looking at the time of possession. It
was 19-3 at one point when Mahomes was playing, though, right? They were almost up by 3 touchdowns when Mahomes was playing that defense.
You're right. And Kenny, I have said that I believe that a fully loaded Mahomes, a 4-quarter Mahomes, leads the Chiefs to a relatively easy victory in that game. And at that point, you do say, okay, you know what? The Browns defense can't match the Chiefs' firepower. And honestly, that's the way the Browns have to look at it going forward. They have to say, okay, when Mahomes is healthy, can we run with him? No, we can't in here, and here. I'm just saying, on that given day, you have to be able to win a game when your much maligned defense is only responsible ultimately, because of the Henne insertion and the injury to Mahomes, the concussion, is only responsible for 22 points. It's inexcusable that the Browns offense, with all of its skill position players, could not score 23 or more. Sorry.
Again, we'll agree to disagree.
Roadman, how are you agreeing to disagree with me on that? All the Browns needed to do was score 23 points.
All the Browns defense needed to do was stop Chad Henne on 3rd and 14th. All the Browns defense needed to do was stop the Chiefs on 4th and 1, and they get the ball back and have a chance to give it back to their offense and go down and get the winning score. The bottom line is, it was a 5-point game, and it was up to the defense to get them the ball back. And they failed. They couldn't get off the field. They had 3rd and 14 with Chad Henne at quarterback, and they couldn't get off the field, and he scrambles for 13 yards. Chad Henne, who's what they time is 40 in a sundial because he's so slow, and he was able to outmaneuver the defenders and almost pick up the first down, and then they gave it up on fourth down. And don't talk to me about fourth downs. You think Andy Reid didn't know the Browns were they've given up 23 out of 25 plays on fourth down all season long? He knew that, so he was going for it because he knew he could get the first down. So it's like the Jose Mesa theory, D-Man. Well, the Indians should have scored more than 2 runs in that game 7, and they wouldn't have had to worry about Jose Mesa. No, the job of a closer is what? It's a 2-1 game. You get 3 outs. Your team wins the game. That's your job. The job of a defense on 3rd and 14 and 4th and 1 is to stop the opposition and give the ball back to your offense, and the defense failed to do so.
Well, okay, but a few minutes before that, the offense had the ball and the season in its control with most of its weapons, with most of its personnel healthy, and all they had to do was go 80 yards with the number 1 overall pick in 2018 leading the way, and they went 7 plays and 12 yards. So, I mean, for what you say about the defense, and yeah, it's true, I'll counter by saying only a few minutes earlier, the offense did a face plant when the season was on the line. And here's the thing, Roadman, if I would have told you before the game that the final score for the Kansas City Chiefs was going to be 22, be honest with me. Would you or would you not have told me the Browns were going to win?
I would have said, how did they only score 22 points, and wondered if Mahomes played the entire game.
Right, but would you have told me the Browns were going to win, though?
Not necessarily.
Why not?
I would lean that way because the Chiefs are the defending Super Bowl champs, and the Browns are a team on the rise with inexperience, and they could have easily turned around and did what the Steelers did the week before and turned the ball over 5 times in a big game like that. So right. I agree with you. That last series was not good from the execution standpoint and the play calling on offense. And like I said, I would have gone for it there, but he elected not to. And as much as we question Stefanski about the decision to punt there, he got them in 3rd and 14. He got them in 4th and 1. He got what he wanted, a chance to get the ball back near midfield, mind you, right? If they hold the Chiefs there. And then you have, 2 minutes to take the ball down the field and score the game-winning touchdown. So, boy, this has really gone negative for a season where they went 12-6, D-Man, won a playoff game, and had the coach of the year. I'm excited about the future for the Browns, as opposed to looking back and saying, my gosh, they blew the game against the Chiefs, and this season went for naught. I think all this was a learning experience for a bright future for this football team. That's the way I look at it.
Well, and I'm not disagreeing about the future being bright. I'm just saying that if the NFL has taught me anything, there are no guarantees coming back the following year. And I mean, you look at the Cleveland Browns situation, as much as we want to talk about the optimism, and there's plenty of it, and I'm an optimistic guy on balance. But look at the payroll situation. I mean, the salary cap. The Browns are a team on the rise who have won 1 playoff game, and yet they're facing some very real financial decisions in the coming couple of years because Miles has already been paid. You referenced that Olivier Vernon will not be paid what he probably is going to get on the market somewhere else. So he's out of here.
That's $15 million you save right there, right?
Right, but I'm saying that even if you let Vernon go and Miles is already paid, among Baker, Ward, Chubb, and then the contracts of Landry and Beckham, they all can't get paid. They all can't either get paid or continue to get paid. Somebody is going to be left out, or somebody's going to have to be jettisoned. And so, you can't say for certain that all of these young guys that you look at as a nucleus are going to be back year after year after year. And think about in the Myles Garrett case, I mean, Myles Garrett really was a shell of himself post-COVID, understandably. I mean, I can't even imagine how difficult it is to have COVID, let alone have to come back from it as an NFL player. But, you know, the best defensive player on the Browns in the final 6-7 weeks of the year was Olivier Vernon. And he's not going to be around next year. So it's fun to say, oh, yeah, look at this core and look at this core going forward. But the reality of the NFL with the injury situation, with the salary cap situation, is you can't automatically enjoy the same guys year over year over year.
The Browns have what, 30 million to spend in salary cap money this offseason, I think it is, right? Is that the number? Yeah. Somewhere in that vicinity, but then you subtract Vernon, that ups that. I know you can't pay everybody, but that's where, Andrew, that's where you have to trust the front office that they'll make the right decisions moving forward with the money that they do have to spend on, the players you mentioned. Baker Mayfield, do they pick up the 5th year? They should. That, to me, is a no-brainer. Nick Chubb, obviously one of the best backs in the league. That's going to cost you some cash there. Defensively, you've got to, shore up that side of the ball. Do you pay Denzel Ward? Can he stay on the field? Is he worth paying? Well, those are the decisions that Andrew Berry and the front office are going to have to make.
I was going to ask you this. Among those guys, and I'm not saying it'll come down to this for the Browns, but if you had to pay one of these guys, Chubb or Denzel Ward, who would you pay?
Chubb. To me, that's easy. He's proven he can stay healthy and be on the field and dominate when he's out there. Whereas, Denzel Ward, while he's Pro Bowl caliber, to me, he's not all pro caliber. To me, Nick Chubb is all pro caliber. That means more than the Pro Bowl to me. Pro Bowl popularity contest, all pro, best of all 32 teams.
All right, we move on to the playoffs. I mean, we continue with the playoffs. Browns lose to the Chiefs. Chiefs go on to handle the Bills and move to the Super Bowl, trying to make it back-to-back Super Bowl titles. Patrick Mahomes and the boys go up against who else? Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brady in his first year with the Buccaneers, first year divorced from Bill Belichick, has the Buccaneers go, I think their final four games of the season were victories because they went from 7-5 to 11-5. And then they run the table in the postseason with road victories against Washington, New Orleans, and Green Bay to get to the Super Bowl. And then the Super Bowl is a domination by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Clearly, Patrick Mahomes' offense was sorely lacking. It was very obvious the tackles being out hurt the Chiefs enormously, but to dwell too much on that, to me, takes away from the total domination of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That defense was more physical. It was faster than we thought. It was punching the Chiefs in the mouth. The Chiefs, all they did was lose their cool instead of respond to it with, commensurate physicality. And I thought the Tampa Bay Buccaneers felt like they were invincible when they took the field at Raymond James Stadium, by the way, their home stadium. I think they felt they were invincible because Tom Brady was on their team. Super Bowl Tom making his 10th appearance. He's now 7-3 in the big game. Your thoughts, Roadman, as you watch the Buccaneers manhandle the Chiefs?
I was guilty of being loyal to a fault like Urban Meyer and other coaches are guilty. And what I mean by that, how many times, did Urban, when Braxton Miller and Carlos Hyde were together, that Michigan State game, he ran Braxton Miller instead of giving it to, Carlos Hyde because he was loyal to Braxton Miller. That was his guy, right? So he stuck with his guy and it cost him, right? Well, I was guilty of sticking with my guy, Patrick Mahomes, even with a bad toe, without 2 left tackles, and, his guard, who was out the entire season. So 3 starters from last year's Super Bowl champs weren't there on the offensive line. And I picked the Chiefs to win 31-28, and I'm looking at a tweet I sent out, D-Man, and this is why I'm saying I'm loyal to a fault. I don't know what I was thinking. I said, I'm torn, leaning to KC, but good reasons to take Tampa Bay to win Super Bowl 55. Mahomes, toe injury. He needs surgery, as we have found out. Kansas City, left tackle, right tackle out. Gay, the linebacker, out. Watkins, questionable. Andy Reid's son in a car crash, distraction. Hard to win back-to-back Super Bowls. Tampa Bay at home, and they get 2 safeties back in Whitehead and Winfield. They learned from playing Kansas City earlier in the year, and the wild card, of course, of all wild cards, Tom Brady. How I still went with the Kansas City Chiefs after looking back at that tweet, I don't know why I didn't believe myself when I sent this tweet out. I was stupid to think Kansas City was going to win that game, considering everything that they were facing in a negative way. And you have the greatest quarterback of all time, arguably on the other, no, not arguably, the greatest quarterback of all time on the other side of the ball. So Tampa Bay, it was all, Bill Cowher said it best. He said it reminded him of his team that won the championship with the Steelers. They got on a roll and they were confident and they finished it off. And so did Tampa Bay and Todd Bowles in that defense. They were licking their chops with those 2 right tackles, or left tackle, right tackle out. They knew they could put a hurting on Patrick Mahomes, who was pressured on 25 of his 40 some pass attempts and ran. Did you see the stat? How many yards he ran for behind the line of scrimmage? 497 yards to avoid pressure, to just throw the football or get sacked. So kudos to Tampa Bay. They were the better football team.
Yeah, I mean, I picked the Chiefs, so I obviously underestimated the Buccaneers. And I was willing to look past the absences that the Chiefs were going to have in the Super Bowl, because I see Patrick Mahomes as Superman, the best quarterback in the game, and he would be able to overcome that with his feet. And even if the tackles are out, they'll be able to hold the block for at least a second and a half, and that's enough for Mahomes to hit Kelsey or Mahomes to hit Hill or any of those speed guys on the outside, in addition to Kelsey over the middle as a tight end, or even guys coming out of the backfield. So I thought the Chiefs' offense, as diversified and as fast as it is, would be able to overcome the losses on the line. I think the biggest underestimation I had and lack of appreciation I had was for Tampa Bay's offensive line. I mean, and Tristan Wirfs being one of the guys on that line. I mean, we're thrilled here in Cleveland with Jed Wills. Well, Tampa's thrilled with Tristan Wirfs. That's for dang sure. That line was a wall. And yes, they gave up a sack. I think it was to Frank Clark in the first couple of series, but they pretty much built a wall around Brady, and he had time to do what he wanted to do. And Brady didn't even have to do that much. I think it was 21 of 29 for 209 and 4 TDs or 3 TDs. And interestingly enough, 2 to Gronk and 1 to Antonio Brown. But the offensive line, not only did it protect in the pass game, but it run blocked extremely well for Lenny Fournette, playoff Lenny. And the Buccaneers were able to achieve an excellent balance on offense. And then their defense was flying around and smashing into people. I think the Chiefs were stunned at how physical the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were. And I think one of the reasons they were stunned by it is because in the first meeting, they blew them out right out of the chute, and Tyreek Hill had 200 yards in the first quarter, and it was a video game. And then the Chiefs kind of took their foot off the gas and let the Buccaneers make it respectable. But I don't think there was ever really an occasion for the Tampa Bay defense to flex, because they were getting run out of the building or run out of the venue. Well, this time the Chiefs weren't running the Buccaneers out of anywhere, and the Buccaneers were able to combine what speed they had, which is pretty good, not maybe elite speed like Kansas City's wideouts, but it's good enough. And they were so physical. They were blasting into Chiefs players and doing a heck of a job on defense. And as you said, Todd Bowles with his D, but let's not forget Bruce Arians. I mean, the head coach of the Buccaneers. Yes, he had Tom Brady fall into his lap, and Brady was the key to everything. There's no question about it. But Bruce Arians got what his incredible NFL career deserved, which was the cherry on top, and that is the Super Bowl title. And in my mind, I know Roadman working in Canton with JT and the gang, you're very close to the Hall of Fame. This victory for Bruce Arians sealed his gold jacket. I think that's all he needed was a Super Bowl title, given all that he's accomplished in the game as an assistant, even as a head coach. He's had a sneaky good head coaching career. But the one thing that was missing was the head coach Super Bowl champion. He got it, and I think that is going to allow him to get into Canton one day. And so I couldn't be happier for Bruce Arians, the Browns coach who never was, the Browns head coach who never was, desperately wanted to be the Browns head coach multiple times, didn't get it. And, I'm very sorry about that, but I'm happy how it's turned out for Bruce Arians, who to me is a great dude.
Yes, he is.
From the outside, it certainly appears that way. A football player's coach, a guy who was willing to speak his mind, who doesn't hold back on stuff. The Brady marriage with him the first year early on wasn't exactly roses and fine wine. I mean, they had some verbal stuff going early when everybody was trying to think, oh, this isn't going to happen. They're 7-5 and the Brady experiment's going to fall. But that was Bruce Arians being true to himself. He wasn't going to sit there and kiss Tom Brady's butt all the time. Yes, he was appreciative that Brady was there, but he wasn't going to get down on his hands and knees and say, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. He knew he had to be a head coach. And Brady, I'm sure, didn't want a butt kisser either. So in the end, it worked out well. They're presumably coming back for more next year. But I couldn't be happier for Bruce Arians, and especially given that Bill Belichick was on the sidelines, and not that Belichick cares, but the fact that the first year Brady was away from Belichick, he took his team all the way to the Super Bowl while the Patriots were 7-9, I find to be kind of hilarious.
Yeah, I enjoyed that very much. Not to degrade Bill Belichick, greatest coach in NFL history, arguably, but it makes you wonder. What was the driving force behind that dynasty in Tampa Bay? Was it Belichick and his coaching ability, along with Josh McDaniels calling the plays, or was it Tom Brady? Well, edge to Tom Brady right now. Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowl championships. The Patriots as a team only have 6, along with the Steelers. So you have to give the edge. And I'm sure Brady will never say this publicly, but he may have enjoyed this Super Bowl win more than any of his other ones, because it proved that he was maybe the reason why the New England Patriots were that dynasty.
Yeah, that's a tremendous point, Roman. I mean, here's the thing. Tom Brady wanted to remain in New England. All it would have taken was for Bill Belichick to pound the table for Tom Brady, because we know Robert Kraft was conflicted, because Kraft loves Belichick, but he also loves Brady. Right. So Kraft was more than willing to have Brady remain. Josh McDaniels wanted to have Brady back. The front office wanted to have Brady back. All it took was Belichick to say, listen, no matter what it takes, we're bringing Tom Brady back. And I don't even know if Brady would be looking for break the bank kind of cash. He never has. I think his streak remains that he's never been the highest paid player on his team. So it's not like he was looking for some gargantuan payday. He just wanted some more respect that he felt he had earned over 20 years. And Belichick was of the mind that, he is, without saying it publicly, diminishing skills. Right. Brady clearly saw, or Belichick thought that Brady's skills were diminishing to the point where he could move on from them. And so Brady said, okay, if you're not going to pound the table for me, I'm out of here. And it's just so interesting that in his first year, they go to the Super Bowl. One more thing about Arians, we don't forget in Cleveland how talented Arians is. Think about the previous playoff team to this year's playoff team for the Browns, the 0-2 Browns.
Right.
Head coach Butch Davis, OC Bruce Arians.
Yep.
Arians called a heck of a game in Pittsburgh in that opening round with Kelly Holcomb throwing for 400. And I mean, they lose 36-33 to Tommy Maddox and the Steelers, but it wasn't Bruce Arians' fault. He called a fantastic game, and they could have had more than 33 points if not for, I don't want to dump on this guy in particular, but we know the receiver who dropped the ball, because I love this receiver. I hate to mention his name.
Dennis Northcutt, I'll mention it. Catch the damn ball and you win the game.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying they would have gotten points out of it, but they would have been able to protect the lead. But so Bruce Arians, the previous time the Browns were a playoff team, he was the OC, and he did a heck of a job for Butch Davis in 2002. All right, well, it's time to take a break, and then when we return, we will talk a little bit of Indians and a little bit of Cavs.
Hey, the Roadman Kenny Roda here from Manscaped. You want to know who has the best, and I mean the absolute best, in men's below-the-waist grooming? It's Manscaped. Manscaped offers precision engineering tools for your family jewels. And if you're working on your family jewels, you want precision, right? And trust me on this, Manscaped obsesses over their technology to provide you with the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide, so join the movement for all your below-the-waist grooming needs. So go to manscaped.com and place your order right now. And when you do, use the promo code NEXTMANUP. Why? Because it's going to save you 20% and you get free shipping on top of that. So that's a 2-for-1 right there. So take care of your family jewels the right way with Manscaped.
We're back on the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. This is Dennis Manoloff, also with me, co-host Kenny Roda, in our final appearance, the final appearance of the Next Man Up podcast that features D-Man and Roadman. Roadman, previous time we spoke was mid-December. We established that earlier at the beginning of the show. That means that we have not spoken about the trade of Frankie Lindor by the Cleveland Indians to the New York Mets, a trade that also included Carlos Carrasco. The Indians get back a 4-pack, including a couple of middle infielders, one of whom is going to start this year for the Indians. The other one will be, nipping at somebody's heels, probably Cesar Hernandez's heels at second base. But it'll either be Jimenez or Rosario at short. And then a couple of definitive prospects from the Mets for Frankie and Carlos. I'll quickly tell you my thoughts about it, Roadman, and then you weigh in with yours. To me, Frankie Lindor was going to be traded. That was a fait accompli. You knew it. Nobody should have been shocked by Frankie Lindor being moved. The Indians were not going to be able to afford him, plain and simple. Even if they weren't on their shoestring budget plan, they were not going to be able to afford Frankie Lindor. That wasn't a shock to me, nor was it a shock to me that he was traded to the Mets, because I said it on the radio as soon as Stephen Cohen bought the Mets for almost $2.5 billion that he wanted to make a splash. He was flush with cash, and he's one of those guys who could afford Frankie Lindor if in fact they want to sign him long term, which I think they will. So it didn't surprise me that he was moved or where he was moved. What bothered me and surprised me was that Carlos Carrasco was essentially a throw-in. That's what stung the most out of that entire deal. What say you?
I'm with you on that. We knew it was going to happen. Okay. Not if, but when and where. So I'm disappointed in what they got back from him. Your job as the general manager of the team, the president of the team, is to, win the trade. Okay. You want to win the trade. And I don't want to go back to Mark Shapiro and his dad in the win-win situation in that book. I read the book and everything, but for me, if I'm the GM, I'm trying to get over on you. Right. And I don't think Antonetti and Chernoff got over on the New York Mets. And you could argue about the pandemic and they were up against it, whatever. Then you should have traded them sooner. Okay. You should have got more for a player of that caliber. So that was disappointing what they got back in return. And like you said, it wasn't just Frankie Lindor. It was Carlos Carrasco as well. And so that's disappointing. But this is who the Dolans are. They are not typical billionaires. It is a family-run business, and they're more of a mom and pop type billionaire than the quintessential multi
Mark Cuban.
Yeah, Mark Cuban, multi-gazillionaire billionaire, if you will, if that makes any sense. The point I'm trying to make is the time is coming where either A, they need somebody else to infuse some money as a minority owner or part owner, or B, they need to sell the team because they can't keep up with these other teams in Major League. And don't give me, oh, we won the most games the last 5 years in the regular season. And how many rings do you have for that? 0. D-Man, if you're going to say about the Browns that when you get that chance against the Chiefs with Patty Mahomes out, you got to win that game. I'm going to say when you're up 3-1 in the World Series against the Cubs, you got to win the World Series and bring home that ring. Okay.
No argument for me here.
It's disappointing that it's come to this. The pandemic obviously affects them even more. And what Trevor Bauer is going to get $40 million this year. And right now he's making more than the Indians and 2 other teams, the entire team in Major League Baseball. So I know the Indians do it well. They compete on the budget that they have, but they've trimmed over $100 million over the last 3 years, and they're trending in the wrong direction as far as, the team goes. And it's disappointing to see. And I wish Frankie Lindor and Carlos Carrasco the best of luck in New York and wherever Frankie ends up, after that. And I'm not excited about the baseball season this year for the Tribe.
Yeah, Roman, I had a problem with, as I said, with Carrasco being almost like a throw-in, a clear salary dump. There was no other way that you could frame that. And don't tell me the Indians were hedging and thought, Carrasco's body would break down,
right?
Given what the challenges he's faced physically. No, this was a salary dump. And I threw out a trade proposal that I thought was more than fair and more than legitimate. And I never got a response from any of my listeners on my shows about why it couldn't have happened. I say, if you're going to trade Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco to the New York Mets, why the heck can't you get Pete Alonso in return? And you say to the Mets, we're giving you these 2 guys and you give us Pete Alonso. That's it. That is it. 3 players, no strings, 2 for 1. And because Pete Alonso is, I think, coming up on year 3 of service time,
right?
He's going to be making, relative pittance for major leaguers, relatively, as I said, for the general populace, a lot of money, but he's an affordable guy for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And maybe the Indians tried that. Maybe they said, hey, we'll give you Carrasco and Lindor for Alonso. And the Mets were like, go fly a kite, go pound sand, go find somebody else. Maybe that happened, but I mean, because initially I had people coming at me and say, oh, the Indians couldn't afford Pete Alonso. Well, yeah, they could. They actually could, based on the fact that Alonso hasn't played very long in the major leagues. And, thinking about coupling him with Franimal in the middle of that order, just mashing right-handed power galore from the DH spot and the first base spot, especially with Carlos having gone to Kansas City. I thought that made a ton of sense, but obviously it didn't happen. And the Indians could also say, hey, we needed to find a legitimate replacement at shortstop for Francisco Lindor. So we couldn't just settle for Alonso. So that was disappointing to me. And, you're right. You were the one who coined the phrase Dolan's discounts. One of your many nicknames and one of your many trademark phrases. And it certainly has felt like Dolan's discounts this offseason. I mean, there's no other way around it, except they rallied a little bit. They rallied a little bit with re-signing Cesar Hernandez, $5 million for this year, $6 million club option next year.
Woo,
and then they bring in Eddie Rosario for 1 year at $8 million. So just when you thought they weren't going to spend anything, they spent a little bit in baseball terms. But I think that the Indians are more than willing, or at least the Dolan family ownership has told the front office, listen, we want to try to win the Tampa Bay way. We don't want to try to win the Dodgers way or the Yankees way or whatever else. So they would much rather be near the lower end and try to win it. And here's the thing about it. You talked about 0 rings, and you're absolutely right. And it's unfortunate because the Indians can hide behind, well, look at how many wins we've gotten. We just haven't been able to win the big one.
Right.
Because they play in a division, the AL Central, that doesn't exactly scare anybody. I mean, last year, the AL Central division had 3 playoff entries. The Indians, the White Sox, and the Twins. And those 3 teams managed a combined 1 playoff victory. 1. The White Sox got one in Oakland, I believe it was. That was it. So the 3 AL Central teams went 1-6 in the postseason and were bounced. So the AL Central is the gift that keeps on giving to the Cleveland Indians. Even with this bare bones payroll, they're going to be able to hang in this division because of their pitching, their young, affordable, controllable pitching. And think about that. They have been able to get away with offloading Kluber, Bauer, Clevenger, and now Carrasco.
Unreal.
A 4-man rotation that could carry a team to the playoffs by itself.
Yep.
They got rid of all those guys, and they're still going to be competing in the AL Central. So they're lucky in that sense, but in another sense, they clearly don't look like they're equipped to run with the big boys when it matters most, and that's the unfortunate part.
How many losses in a row for the Indians in the playoffs, D-Man? What are we up to now?
All right. Yeah, you had the 16 World Series go.
That's 3.
They lose the last 3. Then they open the 17 division series with 2 wins and then lose 3 in a row to the Yanks.
Okay.
The following year gets swept in the division series by the Astros, so that's 6. And then 2 to the Yankees, 8 straight.
Okay, 8 straight.
Didn't make the playoffs in 2019.
Right, 8 straight and 11 of their last 13, right? If you go back to the final 3 and 16 after.
Yes, that's correct.
So they're 2-11 in their last 13 playoff games. Yeah. I don't hear them bringing that up when they talk about those regular season wins. Do you? No. Sorry, I don't hear that. So yeah, it's disappointing. It's unfair to the fans. And if it's too hot in the kitchen, get the hell out, sell the team. And find somebody to buy the team and keep them in Cleveland. And if that's why they're not selling because they can't find anybody that wants to keep them in Cleveland, then tell us that, and I'll give them all the credit in the world and say thank you for keeping the team in Cleveland. But I've got to believe there's somebody out there that would love to buy this baseball team and keep them in Cleveland. Although, D-Man, we're the change of the name too. That's a slippery slope they're going down there. And what are they going to do with that? How are they going to market that? And that's, for another day, another time. But right now the Indians are not in a good position as far as, a franchise that's on the rise and is popular right now.
Well, I want to go back to what you were mentioning about the 2-11. The cruel irony of this is, I'll grant you that, the World Series, the Indians were banged up and we're missing some key guys. It's no excuse. You got to win when you're up 3-1. But I'll grant you some key injuries in that series. But from 17 through 20, a 4-year stretch, 2017, 18, 19, and 20, 3 playoff appearances, 1 missed playoffs, and a combined record in those 3 playoffs of 2-8. And there were a lot of good players on those teams over the last 4 years. Yeah. I mean, for as much as the Dolans have been discounting and there have been some penny pinching, if you go back and look at the 17, 18, 19, and 20 rosters, there were plenty of really, really good major league players who were on those teams, and they still managed just 2 playoff victories over a 4-year span. So even when they weren't forced to, in their minds, to
Right.
offload guys, they still weren't able to win when it mattered most. I mean, some of those the teams that featured, Clevenger was on them, Bauer was on them, Kluber was on them, Carlos Santana, Lindor was on them, Jose Ramirez. I mean, Michael Brantley for a little bit, so they
That's the
had
one that hurt,
horses.
D-Man. That's the one that hurt your guy, Dr. Smooth.
Yeah.
When they didn't bring him back and he wasn't asking for a ton of money, that one hurt when they got rid of him, and they haven't replaced him or found an outfielder worth a damn since that. And that's been a bugaboo for that front office. As good as they are in developing pitchers, they can't seem to find an outfielder worth a damn. And we'll see if Rosario is the answer to that, as they picked him up for 1 year this offseason.
Yeah, that first contract he signed with the Astros, 2 for $32. I'm like, why can't the Indians afford that? But
exactly.
They decided not to. All right, the final of the big three in Cleveland, the Cavaliers, the rebuilding Cavs. They were the darling of the dance at 8-7 after 2 victories over the Brooklyn Nets in Cleveland. And you could start to, do the old Jim Mara and say, okay, playoffs. Mora, I'm sorry. But then they've fallen on hard times since, and they are now 10-15 as we speak. So 8-7 to 10-15. They're in the midst of a brutal stretch against really good teams on a trip out west. They lost to Phoenix last night. The trip continues in Denver tomorrow. Roadman, just quickly, your thoughts about the Cavaliers.
I have YouTube TV right now. YouTube TV and Fox Sports Time Ohio are battling, right, over the cost of what they should charge to have it as part of the package. I haven't seen the Cavs play this year, D-Man. All I've seen are highlights. That's
you're a basketball junkie too,
right? So I haven't had the chance to see them live. I've seen footage and highlights and things of that nature. So JT, the way we've been doing it on the Kenny and JT show, he's watching the Cavs. I'm watching my Buckeyes and Kyle Young from Jackson High School, who was a monster last night for the Buckeyes in beating Maryland on the road last night. They're number 4 in the country. So I'm watching my Buckeyes. I'm excited. They're looking good. Chris Holtman doing a great job. 16-4, number 4 in the country. And then there are the Cavaliers, now 10-15, like you said. What have they lost? 4 in a row, I think it is. And this is game 2 tomorrow of a 5-game left coast trip where they could lose the next 4. That would be 8 straight losses. So, yeah, things aren't looking very bright right now for the Cavaliers. And the more, I don't want to say exciting thing, but the more interesting thing to me is what's going to happen before March 25th. And that's the trading deadline this year in the NBA. What are they going to do? Kevin Love, there was a story I saw before he hurt his finger and had surgery about Larry Nance Jr. And then, of course, Andre Drummond and JaVale McGee, the bigs. Roadman, it ain't about the bigs anymore. It's about shooting the 3. And the Cavaliers suck shooting the 3. They do. Coach Luke, they suck shooting the 3. They're 29th out of 30 in the NBA. In a league that is about the 3-point shot, the Cavaliers have like 22 big guys. It used to be all about the bigs. It's not anymore. So who do they send a couple of those bigs to, and what do they get back in return? To me, that's more interesting than what's actually happening on the court right now.
Yeah, unlike you, Roadman, I have watched 90% of the Cavs possessions because I don't have YouTube. My wife and I, Denise and I, do not have YouTube. We have one of the cable providers, so we watch Fox Sports Ohio Cavs games as much as we possibly can. And
the Cavaliers on a roll tonight. AC.
There you go. They are kind of. It is kind of a difficult spot that they find themselves in because, as you said, in a league and an association where it's 3-D, and the Cavs are all of a sudden taking us back 30 years to the bigs, and Andre Drummond has been fun to watch, no question about it. But even when he was dominating or has been dominating games stat wise, you don't envision him being part of the solution going forward. So this was kind of like a sugar high. You knew you're going to have to come down from it. and probably move on from Drummond, even when he's putting up these ridiculous numbers like 2020 in some cases. It is a little nerve-wracking when you're in a rebuild and your best player is Andre Drummond, especially a rebuild in the 21st century game. And then you've got Love, the highest paid cheerleader in the history of sports, just sitting there waving his hands, waving his towel like ML Carr. And, he can't get on the court. And the Cavs would love him to get on the court, not because they want to see him play well for them as much as they want to see him. They want another team to see him and go, yeah, we can invest in Kevin Love because we think that he's worth, he's not going to break down. Right. The Cavs need Kevin Love to go out there on a night in, night out basis for 3 weeks before the trade deadline and show that he's actually dependable. Otherwise, I don't think there's a team out there that's going to want to take on his salary and his injury history. So they're in a quandary with Love, and obviously McGee is a disposable piece. He'll be out of here, before the 25th of March for sure. But Drummond and Love are the ones that are the question marks. And
D-Man, that's $59 million of salary you just mentioned right there. Drummond and Love, $59 million in a league where bigs aren't that important. So who's going to want Drummond, and who's going to want an always injured, aging Kevin Love? They're going to have trouble, I think, unloading both of those, either one of those guys.
Well, not only that, Roadman, Love is not an expiring contract. I mean, he's signed guaranteed through 2022-23 at somewhere close to $30 million per year. So he's incredibly difficult to move. Otherwise, they would have moved him last year. And now you're kind of stuck while you're trying to rebuild with the younger core. Do you really want Love around? Do you really want Drummond around? And even without pointing it at Drummond or Love, you've got to say, they need to shore up their three-point shooting somewhere. You say, well, Love will give you some of that. But they need actual snipers. They've got to get guys in here who can drain triples from anywhere and everywhere. Maybe they think Dylan Windler will be that guy at some point.
Stop, D-Man. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, I think you got to get some legitimate NBA three-point shooters on this team if you're going to want to rebuild. If you're going to be taken seriously in this rebuild, because I think JB Bickerstaff is a terrific coach, and I think with the right pieces he can do good things. But if you don't have better defensive players and better three-point shooters, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I'm not very optimistic about the Cavaliers. Like I said, I want to impress me, Kobe Altman, get rid of, one of the two, a big-time contract and bigs in Andre Drummond and Kevin Love. You do that. How about this? I need to see him do what Jim Paxson did with Sean Kemp. Didn't think Sean Kemp was tradable, right? And he was able to unload Sean Kemp, and it worked out for the Cavaliers. So pull a page out of Jim Paxson's general manager playbook and find a way to get somebody to take either Kevin Love or Andre Drummond.
All right, Roman, we'll be back in a couple of minutes after this final break for our final remarks as co-hosts of the Next Man Up podcast.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. I created this podcast to have hard conversations. Conversations that make us human but are also wildly uncomfortable. Conversations that help give voice to the voiceless and to the marginalized. Now you can listen to the entire first season on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Consider this your personal invitation to join the conversation.
Welcome back to the Next Man Up podcast. I'm your co-host, D-Man Dennis Manoloff, with co-host Kenny Roda. Roadman, we're wrapping it up. Our run has ended under the Next Man Up podcast banner. As I said, the Next Man Up podcast franchise will live on with Press Play Podcast Network, directed and produced by the great Chase Smith. But Roadman, I can honestly say what a blast it has been rolling with you. I think Chase told us 38 episodes
Right.
of Next Man Up. So honor and a privilege to talk sports with the great Kenny Roda, a Hall of Famer in my book. So I was thrilled to be able to do every single one of them. I wish we could have done more, but our schedules didn't permit. So thank you to you. Thank you to Chase and Next Man Up podcast for making this possible. But I'll leave you with this, Robin, and I'll ask you this question as you wrap up.
All right.
Who gets the title first? Either the Super Bowl, the World Series, or the NBA championship? Indians, Browns, Cavs. Who gets it first?
The Cleveland Browns. I think they're the team that's headed in the right direction and has the brightest future of any three of the teams in town right now. And so I expect within the next 3 years, the Browns to win their first ever Super Bowl championship under the leadership of Kevin Stefanski and the
Dude,
general
I'm not
manager.
asking for Stefanski to be jettisoned. I love the guy.
I'm just making sure on that. Okay.
He just
I
wants
love
the
Kevin
city to
Stefanski.
burn, just like a Steelers fan. He wants Cleveland to burn. That's why he picked the Browns. He just
I was on their bandwagon last year, even when they brought in Freddie with all the talent they had. I picked them to win the division last year, when we were doing this. And if you remember at the end of the season, I said they were going to, so I just think right now they're a team that is positioned with the best talent in a division which the Steelers are on the decline. The Ravens are good, but I don't know if that Lamar Jackson thing will ever go far in the playoffs. And Joe Burrow, they're still a few years away. So I think the Browns have a chance to win their first division title since '89 and be a team that, if not next season, the following season, they have a chance to get to the Super Bowl, but they're going to be in the running next year as well. So I've got the Browns, D-Man. What about you?
I will. It's not going to be the Cavs. Okay, we know that.
Right.
So it's either the Indians. Can they sneak in via the Central Division and then get on a run? But yeah, I'll stick with the Browns, even though they're going to have to give.
The Browns have won one less postseason game than the Indians over the last 4 years.
Yeah, that's very startling and very true. Yes, right? That's a fact, and it stings. But yeah, I would say the Browns, even though they're going to have to figure out a way to get past Mahomes and that video game offense when fully healthy. The Chiefs are a handful, and who knows about the Bills' ascendancy and stuff like that, and the Ravens, are they going to be able to hang in? But yeah, I like the Browns' chances the best of the three to win the world title. And
let me say that. Go ahead, Chase. I'll wait till you're done. Go ahead.
I think that's the easy answer. I think you're both right. I think, honestly, if we were to look at this, I think the Indians have the maybe easiest road to a title. I know we just talked about how they don't bring anyone back. The Browns still have to beat Tom Brady. The Browns still have to get past Patrick Mahomes. The Cavs, I mean, as much as I love the Cavs, they have to
Stop. They're light years
LeBron.
Away. They're light years away.
Right, but I'm saying they have to get through LeBron. They have to get through all the other powerhouses in the East.
They got to get to the playoffs first.
If you look at like the baseball, like what would they have to do? I think the way that teams are successful, I think it can happen quicker than people realize. I think the Indians have one of the best farm systems. I just don't think it's inconceivable for them to be like a championship contender the quickest. I don't know. I just think the other teams have waited.
Chase, who's their shortstop?
Who's
their center fielder? Who's their right fielder? Who's their closer?
And those are all excellent points. I just think you have these incredible.
They live in the Central. Roadman wants Chase's mic turned off so the Dolans can't listen to it.
No, I'm just saying. And are there any guarantees that Zach Plesac and Aaron Savale,
I'm just saying, you got Tom Brady and Mahomes that are still in the Browns' way. You got LeBron and all those other, the NBA is all about, do you have the best player on the court? And the Cavs don't have a top 35 player right now. I know that, Sexton's playing well, whatever. The Cavs never have the best player on the court on any given night. I just think the Indians might have the easiest way to win.
Remember, Jose's contract's coming up in a couple of years too, so he'll be gone, and you'll be looking for a third baseman as well. And Bieber, once he becomes free agent eligible, that'll be their 32nd Cy Young Award winner that they trade away. So that's bound to happen sometime here in the not too distant future.
All right, Roadman, I'll let you walk it off with some final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts, D-Man. It's been a blast. We kind of got this rolling back. And like I said earlier in our business, when we were talking about Les, you and I have both been through it, right? You get hired and you're hired to be fired in the media business like coaches are. And I'm thrilled that things have worked out for you doing your thing now on WTAM. And this was fun, kind of a bridge in between all of that. And you've grown as a talk show host. We knew you could write. That was a no-brainer. And you still can and do it as well as anybody. But it's been fun to see you develop as not just a guest, right? As a solo talk show host talking about not just sports, all the other things as well. So I'm happy for you and glad things are working out for you. And Chase, it's been a blast working with you on this. And I'm thrilled for you as well with what's happening with Press Play Podcast Networks. We had our big group meeting not too long ago, and this network is moving in the right direction under your leadership. It's been a lot of fun working with you and D-Man, and hopefully we can do some things here in the near future.
Thanks.
Awesome. I couldn't have said it better. And it's been a wild, fun ride, and Chase is going to take Press Play Podcast to great heights. We know that. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And, we'll talk to you soon.